How's it going?
It's not ready.
We're ready. Did you get your coffee? I know you were late getting your coffee.
I did get my coffee.
You got your coffee. Okay. Perfect.
So let's talk. Before we dive in, you know what a great customer experience is?
What's that?
In my apartment complex downstairs, there is like a big coffee machine that I can get free coffee all day.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah.
It is awesome.
It is a good customer experience. That's an underrated customer experience. Free coffee, right? It used to be more standard, but it seems like it's gotten tougher to come by.
And it's like a machine, so it's like fresh. It's not just like sitting there all day. And I ran out of coffee in my apartment this morning.
Yeah,
and I got sad.
So you went there. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, my tennis club does the same thing, and sometimes I go there to get coffee as well. So, but
I love that. Well, hello, Raj. How are you? Welcome to Experience Matters, episode 4. Today, y'all, we are going to be talking about closing the loop. Raj and I had some precarious situations over the last couple weeks, which actually sparked the conversation for today. If you don't know, I'm Crystal Weiss. I'm the director of marketing here at Question Pro, and I'm joined by Raj. Give yourself a little introduction.
Yeah, so Raj.
Why are you here? Why do you matter?
I'm Raj Subramanian, Vice President of Journey Management at CS Consulting at Question Pro. Been in the CX space for a while and done the show a few times at Crystal, and it's been fun. And actually, the last show, if you recall, for those of you that are longtime loyal listeners, which I know we have a few of them because they came.
Julie, I hope you're listening.
Oh yeah, there you go. We'll give a shout out to her. We did the last show live, not just live, in person live at the Forrester event, and that was a lot of fun. But it's nice to be back in our personal studios, I guess, right? But maybe let's talk about that for a second before we jump into the topic. Like, what do you think about that? I know I have some thoughts, but how do you think that went? That live show there.
The stream or like the existence of
I mean, I guess both. I mean, I thought it was cool to do it, but then it's funny because I thought it was actually a lot of fun to do it, and we had some spontaneous guests come through, and it was a lot of fun, and we had fun. It felt fun at the time, and I think it was. But then when I watched it later, there were some learnings, right? I did notice that the audio was a little bit tough when we brought the guest in and when we brought the random guest in. So I apologize to our audience if you had a hard time hearing some of that stuff. So there's some learnings that we can take for the next time we do it live.
So you know what's interesting about the difference between Raj and I is you're like, oh, we're going to make it better. We're going to do this. And I'm like, nah. Like, we pulled that thing off and it was awesome, and that's as good as it's ever been.
Okay. So again, I'm teaching you about customer experience. One of the concepts of customer experience is continuous improvement. You want to get better, right? It was a good event, but we can do better. And if we want our customers or our audience to come back, we got to commit that we'll do better for future live events.
Okay. Maybe it's because I'm too much of a chaos. This is why I'm not in customer experience.
Yeah. We're going to get you
there. So that was the first time, like many things at Question Pro, when I think of something and I just decide to do it without particularly all that much pre-planning, is how we get like live shows. That's how Dan and I started live with Dan back in 2021. I looked around the space and said, no one in market research is live streaming like a Twitch or a Discord or any of those kind of concepts. Like, let's do it. And we just decided one Friday to do it. The same going like we had never done a live show at a conference before. And in my head, I went, well, there's not a lot to do in the booth some days. Why don't we do a live show?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was awesome. I think it was good. And it was a good event. People got a lot out of it. And I think people that weren't able to come to Forrester were able to watch and kind of see the vibe there. So I thought it was awesome. So, but yeah, anyway, so moving on, like what happened? You've got a story. I've got a story. I think my story is actually leaving Forrester. But
mine was getting to Forrester.
Okay, so it's all related to Forrester. Yeah. So what's your story?
Okay, so y'all are customer experience people. That's why you're here, and I'm here to learn about that. So I've been trying to spend more time paying attention to the surveys I get in my inbox, or giving real feedback, not just like snarky feedback necessarily. And so leaving for Forrester, imagine a marketing girly with a 75-pound suitcase, a 50-pound suitcase, a duffel bag as a check-on full of 50 hats that we're giving away at the booth, plus a backpack. And I check my luggage in and I get an alert in my email, not a push notification from the airline app and not a text message, but an email. And like, who checks their personal email that often? Thankfully I do. It was like gate change. And I was already running slightly late, like not late, but not in my comfort zone. And it moved from gate 5 to gate 30. And the Austin airport only has one terminal.
Okay.
So you just have to walk across the entire terminal. And I probably had 15 minutes before we started boarding. And I was like, fine, I have to walk all the way to the other side because I had picked the security for the first gate.
Okay.
I haul my 50 hats and my backpack and myself 30 gates. And then I get down there and I get another email from 10 minutes before that was like, gate change to gate 11.
So you had to walk a little more.
Haul myself all the way back.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not saying that it was the most inconvenient.
Is that the most terrible experience? I mean, you had to do a little bit more walking. That's
my guy.
Yeah.
Were you carrying a duffel bag? Duffel bags are not on wheels.
Okay.
Plus, it's like 9 a.m. on a Monday. The airport is busy. And it was less about the fact that the gates changed and the walking. I don't mind the walking. I did mind having to haul all the swag with me. But it's that there was no push notification in the app that I was using to board. There was no text message. And then I got a text message about the flight boarding. So how did I not get text messages about the gate changes, but I got emails?
So and the capability existed for them to send you the messages, but the ones that were relevant you didn't get.
Yeah. Right. So then I went, fine, I made it here. And like if I had it also, besides the fact that I am able-bodied, if you were not able-bodied and you were depending on a wheelchair or a cane, or if you were older, that amount of gate changes without clear communication really puts people at risk.
Yeah. Okay.
And I get all the way down there. I am sweaty. I have not had time to get a coffee or like take a beat or have a morning champagne. And I really think that I was like sitting there and I was like, I am going to give useful feedback because it is like, why wasn't it on the app and why wasn't it in text message instead of just email? And we get all the way to Forrester and Ken, president of CX, goes, they won't send you a survey because they already know your experience was bad. And 10 out of 10 did not get a survey.
You did not, and you were looking forward to taking that survey.
I was looking forward to it because I was.
Have you gotten surveys from this airline after other experiences you've had?
Yeah, on the way home when my experience was uneventful, I got a survey.
Okay.
So they already knew that they had ruined my experience and then chose not to send me a survey.
Have you gotten that survey after every single flight? Do you think it's because it was a bad experience, or you just didn't get a survey that time?
Because I didn't get a survey that time. And I have gotten surveys from this airline multiple times before.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
And part of me goes, thanks. Okay, if you all work in customer experience, two things. Do you think this is a little controversial? Raj isn't going to like that I asked this question. Do you think you know better than the consumer? And why aren't we sending surveys no matter what the experience?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, it's I can't say for sure I know what this particular airline did. If they didn't send the survey because they knew you had a bad experience, that's not the right approach. I do know that with a lot of companies, they view the survey as a way to just put a metric up there to say they care about customer experience, to say that they're measuring it. But unfortunately, a lot of companies don't actually do anything with the feedback, that's the next thing we'll get to, right? Closing the loop. But a lot of companies
don't open the loop.
They didn't even open the loop, right? So I think I think if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, you could say, they know what they screwed up and they're going to fix it, and they don't need your feedback, right? Because they know what they're going to do. But then you're right, but they could potentially have not sent the survey because they're trying to game the system and keep their scores high, right? Because and this is done by a lot of frontline people. We've talked about this before, right? Where if an agent knows that you've had a bad experience, they'll figure out ways to not send a survey because it's going to hurt them individually. This is a little bit different because it's not an individual person being impacted by it. So, but I think it's a problem with the way that a lot of organizations treat surveys. I call it the metric-centric trap. You've probably heard me talk about that before, where companies get so focused on the metrics and the numbers, and they lose sight of the insight. And I think if you're treating surveys as a way to set metrics and targets, it's always going to be gamed, and unfortunately you're going to lose out on good customer feedback when that happens. So I'm sorry that happened to you. You probably should have gotten the survey.
I really hope everybody at Forrester who got those hats really enjoyed them, because I hauled them across the airport 3 times.
Yeah. So you went to a lot of effort to get the hats there. Yeah. So what would you have said in your survey response? What would you have said?
I would have probably done a low NPS score, because in that experience was poor.
Yeah.
And because I know you have to like do a low one to make sure anybody pays attention to you. And then also I wanted to give feedback about why my app or text messages didn't alert me to the gate change.
Yeah.
That's the problem is like my experience was made worse because the systems they have in place didn't work.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I got we're boarding text. And I was like, so why could I not have gotten text about the gate changes?
Yeah.
Even though I got 3 emails.
Okay. Yeah.
That was more, it was less about complaining that they changed the gates and more that they were not communicating that gate change, what put not only me at risk, but other travelers at risk for missing. Like, how often do you check your personal email?
Yeah, no, you're right. They should have sent you the notification. Yeah.
And so that's really all I wanted to say. But if customer experience departments are so scared of their numbers affecting their jobs, their budgets, they need to be different advocates differently to and educate their teams that numbers aren't all that matters.
Correct. And that's why I always say, like, surveys and customer feedback should be a mechanism to learn about the experience, but that shouldn't be the goal or the target itself, right? You want to set goals against people, set them against fixing things and not against survey scores. And
I think that actually goes around to how best, to June's question about how to best structure a closed loop experience.
Yeah, that's true. We'll get to let's get to June's question in a second, and then maybe Paulina, you can put that up after my story, because I want to tell my story.
Oh, of course, Raj.
I mean, I have some sympathy for you, but I think my situation is much worse than a gate change. But
me trying to haul my butt across the airport. Yeah. Okay, Raj, tell us your story.
I almost didn't get home from Forrester, right? So I left Forrester. I left Nashville. I actually went to Kansas City the next day. I had a cousin's bachelor party that I went to for a day, and it was fun, very tame, but fun. But then I had to come home, right? And I'd been traveling all week, was trying to get home. My flight I got a notification the night before, my flight was canceled. So then I rebooked on something else, and then I had to change the flight. And then the next morning, and I had a 6 a.m. departure. I got up very early from Kansas City after a night out to take this flight back home to San Francisco. And then I got a note that my flight was delayed. And then I got a note when I'm headed to the airport that the flight was canceled, right? So then I'm like, okay, fine. What do I do now? I call into this airline. They said there's no other flight options because I had a connection that can get you home. We can get you home tomorrow. Which was not acceptable for me, right? Because I had to get home to the family. I'd been traveling all week. I had a big tennis match the next day. There's a lot of reasons why that was unacceptable. So I get to the airport. I ask a bunch of different options. They said there's nothing they can do. Everything is full. So then sometimes, when an airline can't accommodate you, they will accommodate you on another airline, right? So there's other airlines that had flights, right? So I asked them, hey, can you book me on this one? They said, no, we can't do that, which I was surprised by. But they said, hey, you can book it yourself. If you book it yourself, and then you can apply for a reimbursement afterwards, right? And then we'll cover you for it, right? But I'm like, I got to do that. I had to pay a significant amount of money out of pocket. I've never done this. You buy a ticket right there at the counter, right? I went to the counter. It's back in the
movies.
Yeah, it's like in the movies. Yeah, but I have to get home, and the flight was leaving in an hour. So I paid an exorbitant amount. I got this flight. I actually got home. I'm glad I did, because the flight that they were going to put me on, this other airline, got delayed further. And it would have been 2 days before I got back because they had some other problems that day. So that airline, I got home, they knew they messed up, right? They didn't just mess up for me. They messed up for a lot of people. Interestingly enough, we didn't get a survey either, which was interesting. Probably because they knew. But one thing they did, which is interesting, a lot of companies are doing it. It's what I call proactive service recovery, right? Like, so they know they messed up. They reach out ahead of time. They sent me, like, even without me asking, they sent me meal vouchers, hotel vouchers, a bunch of stuff, which again, I think is good in theory, right? It's using AI to automate and figure out, okay, these people were all delayed and canceled. But I had a conversation with them. They should have known that I didn't need any of that stuff, right? I already got home on another airline, right? So they didn't do any. They tried these tactics. It was probably unnecessary. But then the guy told me, like, you can apply for a reimbursement, right? So they did send me a note saying you can apply for a reimbursement. So still no survey, still no feedback. I got this form. I applied for the reimbursement. They gave me a partial reimbursement. They didn't actually reimburse me the full amount, which is unacceptable. So again, they kind of closed the loop.
How do they decide how much the value of the flight is?
I know, exactly. And I submitted receipts. I submitted all this stuff, and they said, well, and it was ridiculous. They gave me most of it, and they were like $70 short, right? Which, again, I don't understand why you would do that, because it's a small amount of money. I have a receipt. Yeah. So then I want to give them feedback, right, that this is unacceptable. So I respond back to the email, but then it goes to this, like, automated system. I get this automated.
It's like the whole story of Ken getting an email from a hotel.
Yeah,
that the reply to, like, the person who sent the email doesn't even exist.
Yeah. No, exactly. So again, it's an example of an airline trying to do the right thing. The proactive service recovery was the right thing. The reimbursement was, but they still kind of screwed it up. And I still don't have the mechanism to kind of close the loop right now. So I'm still waiting. I actually responded to the email. I employed my favorite tactic, which I told you about before, where I copied.
I know, I'm going to steal this from you.
Yeah. So I copied the CEO of the airline on my email, and I said, this is unacceptable. I expect the full amount. And then I got an automated response saying, we'll get back to you in 14 days. Right. So it's still not like a great close the loop experience. Right.
For, like, one, that's crazy that you had to buy a ticket at another counter.
Yeah.
And that they, really kind of, like, automated a way to make you feel better. But, like, again, like, travel is a big one. I think that healthcare is probably a hard one too. When people feel like you are impacting their life, they're obviously going to be slightly more charged. So you can use AI to mitigate that. But at the same time, if you are just, like, essentially pacifying people, like, that, are we
so they were kind of
okay,
close.
This is going to be a mean one. Ready for it?
Yeah,
With CXPA, should it just be the customer experience pacification, like pacifying association?
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's the thing. They sent these vouchers out, and they said you can do this, but it's so they can report out, hey, we are closing the loop, but they're not doing it in a personal way, right? And I think it's actually, it's okay to automate your recovery attempts, right? To scale it. I think we have a question about that. I think it's good to do that. And we actually we tell a lot of our clients, and we offer that in our closed loop system. We provide automation where you can automate a response back to a customer, but it's really important to always say, hey, if you want to contact us, here's a phone number, right? So provide the number so you can still get the human connection, because customers know when it's an automated response, right? So, like, providing that option is important.
And I think that customers are getting more and more digital literacy around, like, what is AI and what's not. And that is really, I'd love to, maybe me and Powell can do this, like, do a survey on, do you trust AI customer experience responses?
Yeah.
Right? And that's really, like, are you creating, you may be pacifying your customers, but you're not creating trust with them.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is, airlines are obviously, like, I would call myself a pretty chill traveler. I, like, travel by myself, toss my headphones in. Like, as long as I'm at the gate by boarding, I don't really care. But
well, airlines never change the gate on Crystal. She's chill, but don't ever change the gate on her. So.
Like, but I wasn't rude to anyone once I got there, right? Like, I was like, this is a minor inconvenience of annoyance.
Yeah.
But it's not going to affect how I treat people in the world, or how I don't have, like, knock on wood, I'm blessed to not have anxiety when traveling. Like, I just kind of, like, roll with the punches most of the days. But that is a small segment of people.
Yeah, correct. That's a good point.
And I know and I'm educated enough on knowing where I can put my annoyances. Where I literally was pumped. I was like, I'm gonna fill out this survey. And then you
Yeah,
see
and then
me
that
in
that
my
that probably
option
made
to
your bad
fill out.
experience. That made your bad experience worse 'cause you didn't get the opportunity to give feedback, right? So that made
Yeah,
your bad experience worse. And then if you got it and they didn't close the loop, that made it even worse, right? So,
come on,
um,
guys, killing me. Just open the loop. You can't even close it if you don't open it.
yeah. I think we got some questions come
We got
in.
some great
Yeah, we got
questions.
some great ones. Paulina, can you put up maybe some of them? I think some of them are related to what we've just been talking about.
Here we go.
Yeah.
How to best structure the closed loop experience.
Yeah,
Some
that's
might
a
say, June, to open the experience.
open it first. Yes. It's a great question. I can actually talk about this for hours, but we don't have that much time. But I would say I think a couple key takeaways for building a closed loop experience. One is just prioritize acknowledging feedback as much as possible, right? So one of the things that I talk about a lot, and actually the folks at so a real good someone I really trust a lot, Rob Markey from Bain, has said this to me before, and he's talked about how customers companies overestimate how much companies want resolution. What they really want is acknowledgement of their feedback. Yeah, yes, you need to resolve issues, but
Yeah.
acknowledging feedback can go a long way. And I've seen this with companies that have built programs, even programs that I've built. When we close a loop with customers and just acknowledge the feedback, that's important. So you can use AI to scale that, right? Like we were talking about, you can figure out anyone that's had an issue, given a poor score, and just acknowledge the feedback. But then it's important, if you acknowledge it, to have a mechanism where if somebody wants to speak to a person, they can do that. And then I think it's important just to ensure that you kind of prioritize the most important issues and give people that opportunity. But I think it's also important to close the loop, not just with your people that have negative feedback, right? I think if people give you
Right.
positive feedback, there's learnings from there as well that you can get, right? So I think, and another part of it is involve more people in this process, right? So a lot of companies think about, hey, it's just the frontline people that can close the loop, but there's actually a lot of people in an organization that could benefit from hearing feedback from customers, right? Crystal, you I think you even joked the other day, like how many people actually speak to customers. There can be a lot of value in having people that aren't necessarily in front of customers every day, having that opportunity to hear feedback directly.
Mhm. I mean, I think it goes back to empowering your entire organization to answer questions and like support people, which I would say most companies don't want to do, or they don't. As a consumer, like I feel like I sit in an interesting position because yes, I'm the head of marketing for a B2B company that I'm really proud of. But also, I'm still a consumer every day of the week. Like, this is what I hate about B2B marketing, where we build these like ICPs about like Jan, who's a B2B buyer. And I'm like, Jan doom scrolls TikTok like everybody else.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, but at the end of the day, I'm still a consumer and I'm still having bad experiences, even though I am educated in how to navigate those experiences.
yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point.
And so
Yeah,
I think some of this, like, we're some people might not buy it, like Crystals. It's not a facade, guys, that I don't know anything about CX. It's that these days I'm confused why CX people are like users or practitioners aren't out there with their customers every day. Like
yeah. No, I am too.
walk in the airport.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean they should actually live the experience of their customers and figure out how to
Mhm.
improve it, right? And having that opportunity to hear from customers is important.
Yeah.
There was a
I-
question from Danielle, I think.
oh
Pauline,
yeah.
if you put that one up, I think it's kind of related to this that I wanted to answer it as part of June's. Yeah, this is a great point, and I think this is why I think a lot of companies just are afraid to build out closed loop programs because of this point. They want to be careful about what to do when responding, right? And then this goes back to the earlier point I made about acknowledging the feedback is important, right? So if you acknowledge it up front, that's important. And then I think you can structure it's kind of even related to how to structure. If you have a lot of people involved in your closed loop program, you can figure out, and this requires a little bit of work and some analysis, but you can get a sense of what types of negative feedback might require a frontline person that's very experienced in dealing with it and which ones don't, right? So if it's a simple issue where someone just needs acknowledgement, you can let other folks in an organization just get that feedback, but then you can actually just like in a call center, you push the most critical issues to your most experienced people. If you see the feedback and you can use text analytics to determine like how negative this is, how upset this customer is, have the right person contact them. And then when you're responding to negative feedback, I think this is more of a, even actually, and I'm going to give life lessons beyond just CX, right?
Isn't that what CX
and maybe parental guidance as well, right? So I've got a lot I can learn and provide, but like I think when you're responding to negative feedback, the important thing is, yes, listen first, right? Listen, acknowledge, right? Empathize with whatever the concern the customer has, and do it in a human way, not a scripted way, right? So I think the thing that really pisses me off as a customer is when I'm upset and I call, or I even get a callback or whatever, and the person I'm talking to has a script that they got to follow, right? And customers can see what fake empathy is, right? So when someone's reading a script and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, you've had this thing," whatever, like you can tell when it's a script. So I would say when you're responding to negative feedback, encourage your and again, if you have the right people doing this, encourage them to go off script. Encourage them. Don't even have a script, right? Just have them listen, have them empathize. Again, this is probably something I could do better even at home with my wife and my kids, right? Like, listen.
We could do CX and relationship advice episode.
Yeah, I agree. It could all be the same thing, right? So yeah, it's important to listen. Let them vent, and then I think it's important. The other point is if empower people. If you can actually fix an issue by doing something small or going above and beyond, do that, right? Because those little wins help over time, right? So, so I think just kind of humanize and have empathy, I think, is an important part of this.
The fact that we have to train customer experience people for empathy blows my mind.
Yeah, I know. It is crazy.
Maybe it's because I'm from the Midwest that empathy is like it's not even, and it's not like Canadian fake empathy. It's real empathy.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a baseline of where I probably operate in the world, is like starting from zero and moving my way up. Do you think, and this maybe, I would love to do a survey on this, like as we're thinking about like talking through this episode, I'd love to just collect some data points. One from CX professionals. If I send you an anonymous survey, and I promise it's anonymous, we know how to make surveys for Question Pro, will you fill it out with real details? Because I want to know what CX professionals really think in the world. And two, are there different ways that CX professionals and systems relate to different economic or levels, right? We know that Ken is like a united infinite life traveler.
Yeah.
But then like how
now we're calling out brands now, and now we're
I'm sorry. But like, and I'm like a united nobody.
Yeah.
And I know that there are some differences in how those people get customer
Oh,
experience.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And there should be.
Should there be?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. You and I may disagree.
I mean, yes, because I mean it's their most loyal customers. You should treat them better. I mean, that's just like, because they're the ones that are gonna spend more, that are gonna do more for you, right? Like I would treat Ken better than I treat you, because he's gonna spend a lot more money with me, right? I mean, not right,
but that example. At the end of the day, then that almost is in a I would say maybe that's in a conflict with the like empathy baseline.
No, okay, that's a good point. Okay, obviously you should there's a baseline level of like, yes, I should have empathy if you have a concern, like I should take care of it for you. But the level that I'm going to go above and beyond for you might be different than what I do for Ken, because there's a economic rationale for doing that, right?
And I know, and then like libertarian inside of me is like, because then you're essentially using economics and the like wealth to decide what kind of customer experience people get. And like, that's kind of a bummer.
We could have a whole nother podcast about this topic. Right? The important thing about customer, it's important to do right for your customers, right? But the reason you're doing that is you want to deliver great customer experiences so your customers come back and spend more, right? And that's why companies invest in customer experience, because there's an ROI on it, right? So you do want to focus on your most profitable customers and
Okay,
keep
I
them
hear
loyal.
you. We'll debate. Maybe
All
I'll
right,
bring
well, we can have another debate about showing the financial value of customer experience. That's a whole other topic that we can talk.
No, I didn't even say showing the financial value of customer experience, like getting a seat at the table. Get it. 10 out of 10.
Get that.
Totally
Okay.
understand.
Okay.
Treating customers differently based on their economic value.
Yeah. That's
Ooh,
related to that point, though. They're both related, right? And so,
interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
because there's not an infinite pile of money to give to everyone or to make everyone right. So you have to.
I wasn't saying give them. I'm saying how
Yeah.
you treat them.
And I agree with you on that. You should treat your customers like, yes, basic. I'm not saying like you should get bad support. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Raj, it's okay. You're fine.
Yeah.
So let's do one final question. How do you Sheila has a question about how to respond to 1 and 3-star reviews. And how would you inspire them to reach out with their contact information?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good point. I would say I think the first thing is not how, just respond, right? So like I think respond to the low reviews, right? I think I do see this a lot, right? When I'm browsing places to stay and I'm looking at hotels or whatever, and I see poor feedback. When I see that a brand responds to the feedback, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Because you can't create perfect experiences for everything, right? So when companies take time to respond to feedback, I elevate them in my mind, and I'll actually say, hey, you know what? Maybe this is worth doing, right? I've told you before, like I host Airbnbs myself, right? So I know that like sometimes a 3-star review is not necessarily the provider's fault, right? So I would say definitely respond to those low reviews, and then I would reach out and say, hey, if there's anything I can do to help, let us know, and then and ask them to provide their contact info to you, and then I think just make that an option, and I think if people want to provide that information and tell you more about what's happening, I think they'll do that, right? So but I think that just the act of responding can go a long way.
And I think now it's also about like saying like, hey, send us a direct send us a DM or send us a message.
Yeah.
Don't put their, don't be like, put your public information on
no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
And so it also means mixing, I think, where as a layman's consumer, most people would assume that your social media team that's like running replies on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or Yelp is also a part of your customer experience team. And a lot of times that's not true.
They're not the case. That's a good point.
In the way teams are set up. So I would say sometimes I feel as a consumer, I am getting in trouble for not knowing how you guys set up your CX.
And that's not your fault. That's a problem. Organizations need to bridge those silos, right? Like you're just giving feedback, you expect it to be acknowledged and respond to. So I mean, I think that's maybe even the broadest lesson coming out of this is, right, like companies need to get better about bringing that feedback together and getting it to the right people that can go fix and close the loop with the customer.
Because like consumers aren't going to know, like, how many of my friends I've had to tell, like, guys, you can't, if you're unhappy, don't pick 7 or 8 because that's like a passive. You have to pick lower than that. Because like having to educate ourselves on how to like interact with customer experience professionals because they've made this like Candyland situation like is not always fun.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of opportunities to open the loop and then close the loop, but it's going to take more effort than maybe just like automating it with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it takes a commitment, it takes a desire to improve the experience, and it takes a desire to realize that you're collecting feedback not for targets and metrics, but to make things better overall, right? So to your point, yes, open the loop first and foremost, but then once you open it, make sure you close it too.
That is the takeaways from this episode. If you guys want us to talk about anything, and I'm sure I probably insult a whole lot of you while I'm trying to learn, so I apologize.
I'm sure you do. Yeah, I'm sure you do. We may have lost some listeners today with some of your takes, but
I really I try to operate as like your next door neighbor. Your next door neighbor probably doesn't work in CX, and so like we want to make their experiences better. And I think Raj always hits on that. Like your intent has to be to make the experience better, not to get your bonus. I mean, not that bonuses are bad, but like not to just hit the metrics to make the dashboard look good.
Yeah, exactly. And then you are asking, I'm giving you a hard time, but you do ask the right questions. And the fact that you're pushing me on some of this stuff, I think these are questions that everyone in CX needs to consider themselves, right? So I'm glad you're pushing all of us in the way what we're thinking about.
It's definitely got me and Paulina were like messaging behind the scenes on this episode. I already got like a bunch of ideas around what we can do.
Yeah.
Or even just like building out a survey asking the general population if they understand how they view customer experience.
Yeah.
And I think that would be something would be really interesting and insightful for our next episodes.
Yeah.
We'll be back here in August, hopefully with some guests. And if you guys have any questions in the meantime, please make sure to hit Raj and I up on LinkedIn. You can always find us there or send us an email.
And I think we had a few questions we didn't have time to get to. So if we didn't have time to get to your questions, we'll respond offline. But connect with either of us on LinkedIn if you have other questions you want answered.
Yeah, we'll be here ready to answer your most authentic questions. No CX question can be unheard of. I just essentially accused Raj of, not doing great CX for people who don't spend very much money. We'll
cover that topic in detail at a later point. So.
We appreciate y'all, and I hope you have an amazing Wednesday.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.